Hello everyone, hope you're doing great and welcome to this new video. Today is the start of a new series in which I'll be coming at you with playtest feedback, deck building advice and general concepts. As you may know already, I make you guys vote for which deck I'll be playing at locals each weekend and then try to build a list and try it in real tournament conditions. By the way, I've started a new gameplay channel to bring you sample videos of me playing these very specific legends so you can see what the games look like. We are kicking off this series with Leona, but next episode is already planned and it will be about Blue Victor, so feel free to leave a thumbs up if you like this video. And without further ado, let's get started. Let's just go over this Stun Goes Bound list that I played last weekend. So this is the list that I've been playing over at locals last weekend. Might be a bit of a spoiler, but I ended up going 2-1. Regarding how the tournament went, there was only one Kai'Sa player at this locals. And most of the field I was favored into. So it was about beating Kai'Sa, and that is what I tried to do in building this list, being able to try and have a shot into winning the Kai'Sa matchup, because it's a very tough matchup. Most of the time you lose it without being able to compete at all. And so with this list I'm trying to make it a bit fairer in if I outplay him, I have a shot at winning it. I still think the Kai'Sa matchup is pretty tough. Maybe I've not found the correct answer to this matchup right now, but I don't think it's favored anyway. You could probably add cards to make it a bit easier, but I'm going to talk about it later. That's still a big problem in my opinion. Now, regarding the particular list, there are a lot of things I want to talk about. The first one being battlefield. You guys might be thinking I'm always going for the same lineup, and you probably aren't totally wrong, right? These battlefields I tried to play because I think Leona has one big problem, apart from Kai'Sa, but deck building wise, Leona has one big problem. It lacks draw power, and it kind of forces you to play cards that you don't want to play, like Eden Blade. You already have a lot of great spells at dealing with opponents' bodies, and so Eden Blade is kind of not what you want to include in your deck, in my opinion. And so I tried to compensate for the lack of draw power in the main deck by using draw power battlefields, and this I was pretty happy about. So game 1 is Zone Warrens, and then whenever I'm going first game 2 it's this, or first game 3 it's this, and then going second it's this. Basically that was my spread for battlefields, and I was pretty happy about it. I think that's what I'm using the most right now when I'm playing green as a battlefield lineup, and I'm pretty happy with the way it works. Monastery of Irana is a cool one now. I kinda wanted to try it at the beginning. I feel like these battlefields are mandatory when you are playing green, because you are so good at holding because of all your buff and stuff, and you are so good at targeting units that you have to play these two. Now, Monastery adds some advantages and some problems. Big advantage is that you get extra cards, whereas with Zone Warrens you discard one, draw one, so you don't generate value, you just cycle through your hands. Monastery draws extra cards actually, but big disadvantage is that you still are stuck with cards you sometimes don't want to draw, but you want to play in the main deck, like this card that I don't want to have in some matchups and I want to have in some other matchups in my hand. And also, sometimes you want to value having buffs on your units because you are very good at defending, and so every might that you can gain through a buff is very valuable combined with your spells, while spending your buff to draw cards is also valuable. So you are kinda conflicted, and you also have Call to Glory that already needs you to have buff to be efficient. So all of this combined, I decided that I would probably rather play Zone Warrens over Monastery. So that was it for battlefields. Regarding runes, it's you guys know the drill now. It's about being able to defy on turn 2. You have way better odds to be able to defy on turn 2 when you're on 7 green runes than when you are on 6. And then I was playing yellow Leona in the champion spot and 2 green Leonas in the main deck. I know most people are on green Leona in the champion spot and they rely on drawing the yellow Leona, but I figured that games where you don't access the yellow Leona are almost auto lows, whereas this card is so strong because on its own it's when I attack I stun, so most of the time you're going to win this fight because you stun the opponent's unit, and then when you stun you get a buff, and when you're defending after you won the fight you get shield. So this card is a 6 might for 4 energy card, which is insane, and so I kinda wanted to have it in my champion spot to be able to access it anytime during the game,
And then this Green Leona is a very good grind card, but that is not something that you want to open too often. And since I added ways to dig through the deck, I was fine with the idea of playing 2 of them so that I'm able to find them in the later game. Or if I open them in the early game, I don't open too many of them, and so I'm able to just discard them, get rid of them, and it's fine. So that was the whole thinking process around selecting those champions. Then I'm not going to talk too much about like green staples, like this is something you have to play, like it's just so strong and works so well with what the deck wants to do. So I obviously played the maximum copies of these cards. Something that you guys might not be used to seeing me do is playing a lot of turn 1s. Well, Leona does something very well, and it's defending battlefields, because if you have a 1 might unit at a battlefield and your opponent comes in with a 1 billion might unit to attack you and you stun them, they lose the fight because they're stunned. So Leona values very hard the fact that you are able to take over the board in the early game, and for that specific reason I wanted to have 8 turn 1 cards in my deck so that I am able to take over the battlefields in the early game. And if I'm paired into Kaisa, I have several early game units that I can drop even after getting blasted. So I'm on 8 turn 1s. If you guys are wondering why 8 and not 9, basically you have to think about mathematics, and like you have 2 curves. One of them is how many chances do I have to draw one of these, so let's say it's this one. And then you have another curve which is how many chances do I have to draw multiple of these, which you kinda don't want to, right? You don't want to draw like 3 turn 1s in the game, and which is this one, let's say. And so the exact number of copies in your deck where both these curves cross is 8 copies. If you go to a 9th copy, you are increasing your chances of opening multiple copies more than you are increasing your chances of opening one of this specific card type. And if you go below, each card you add still increases the amount of opening one more than it increases the amount of opening multiple. So basically, if you want to find one of a specific type of cards in the early game, you should go for 8 of this type of cards, and in this case it's turn 1. I considered playing Clockwork over Daring Poro, but I wanted a card that was not so terrible in the later game, and I consider that I had enough runes to burn in the deck so that I would not be able to burn a rune for free while drawing Clockwork in the later game. So I think this unit is like rather a bit better, but like not by a large margin. These are the goats though. This is very good at defending. Whenever you buff it, it gets to 4 might defending, it's very strong. And this, well, basically it's either you have a 1 might unit and you can challenge you can like defend yourself against a 1 billion might unit, or you just let it die and you're fine because you get an extra rune out of it. So like basically it's a pain for your opponent because they have to commit resources to fight this scout, and if they don't, you will score points. So the might stat does not really matter on this card. It's like either you value or you value, so like whatever. Then regarding the rest of the list, I wanted to have 8 stuns in the list, at least 8 stun spells. In my opinion, the strongest of them is Vinit Blades. It's crazy good card. I cannot understand why Leona players are not playing Venus Blade. This card can't be defied. It's like so broken. You have so many insane interactions with these cards. One of them being with the Green Leona. So you play Zenith Blade, you stun a guy, you bring Green Leona, the guy is less 8 might, and like sometimes you can just do this in like empty battlefields where like your opponent is attacking an empty battlefield, you have a shot to play an action during their turn, you play Venus Blade, and you bring a unit and you stun theirs. And so not only do they go back to base without being able to conquer, but you also score a point during their turn because you conquered, and then you score a point at the beginning of your turn because you held. And that's such a strong interaction in the early to mid game, and also that's a stun in the late game, so you are able to fight into bigger units. And I decided to play 3 Face Breakers over Rune Prison. The first reason for this decision was that I wanted to like be wary about not having too many power burns needed to run the deck. So this does not burn, this does burn. The second reason was that I am playing a lot of spells, so sometimes having a lot of runes open at the end of my turn is valuable. And like if I'm on Rune Prison, I will need to use runes to play Rune Prison. Whereas if I'm on Facebreaker, I can just hide it because Discord has access to the hidden keyword. And so I think Discord like stacks better with these guys than Discord does, which is why I was playing 3 Facebreakers and 2 Rune Prisons. That being said, the third Rune Prison is in the sideboard for big bodies matchups, so like it's not so far, right? Then Call to Glory is just rather logical to me. You are able to generate buff on a consistent basis, so basically this card is free and it works very well with Engwar, Discipline and stuff, so like you have multiple pumps. So I just like this card, I just think it's a great card and you should play it when you have the ability to make advantage out of it, so I did play it. And the two last cards I think are this guy and this guy. So I'll start with the Shield Bearer. Oh no, there is the Herald. So maybe I should talk about the Herald before, right? Like it's important in the thinking process. This is of course not a card that I want to draw in the early game. For you guys who don't know what Herald does, it's a 7 energy, 7 might card that burns a green power when it enters play. And its effect is when you stun an enemy unit, ready me and give me +1 this turn. And so if you guys have been watching my videos for some time, something that I was always a big advocate of is if you have the opportunity to do so, you should play 5 mites and 7 mites units in your deck because these are very good at beating Kai'Sa. Of course, you should not include trash units in your deck just because they are 5 or 7 mites. But if you have the opportunity to play good 5 or 7 might units, you should do so. And I think Herald is a very good card in this particular build. Also, it gives you some kind of a high roll potential that sometimes Leona misses a bit. In like, you have Herald and then you have 1 or 2 stuns on the side that you did set up during the previous turn. And then you can just like go Herald, take a point, then stun someone with like Venus Blade, then Herald restands and you bring someone there and then Herald goes back to base and then you have another stun and you can just restand it and fight again. And so it gives you that tiny bit of like explosive power that I felt Leona was sometimes missing in the later game, which was the reason I decided to include this card in my deck list. Primarily to try and beat Kai'Sa, and second to give me a bit more resources in the late game. And then I decided to include the Solary Shield Bearer, mostly because of Herald and also because I wanted to have, once again, extra early game units to be able to deal with Kai'Sa's Blast. And so Solary Shield Bearer is a great card with Hero, paired with Hero because it's a stun. So it's when you play me, stun a unit. So it's a stun that allows you to like restand Herald to conquer again, right? And also, this card is not as bad as people think, because they're like, yeah, but it's under might. But like whenever it spawns, it stuns someone and then Leona effect gives it a buff. So it becomes a 3/3, which is like kind of average in the current formats. But I'd rather play a 3 energy 2 might core that is able to buff itself rather than a flat 3 energy 3 might core, because I do have a mechanic in my deck that allows me to spend buffs to generate value out of it. So I might as well play a Shield Bearer buff itself and then I have a free buff to spend for glory whenever I need it, rather than play any 3 energy 3 might core. So that was the reasoning. Works well with Herald and is a good early game unit and like works with glory, so might as well play it, right? And so I was on 37 cards plus yellow champion, and then I just had 2 spots left. I was pretty happy with what I had in the deck, and so just as we were talking about for Kai'Sa earlier, I was thinking, okay, then maybe we should probably fill the rest of the spots with like consistency cards since we have a draw power problem. And that's why I added meditation, which felt pretty good. To be fair, sometimes opponent is scared of fighting your bodies because you have runes open and you could probably have stuns. And that's when you can play meditate to like tap your bodies and draw cards. Like they did not do nothing, so might as well make value of your runes. Also in the late game, it's a card that you really like to draw because most of the time you will have units in battlefield, and so you are very happy to like tap them to make card advantage. And also, it's a free side-out card for these guys right here. So in some matchups, I side 2 windows in some matchups, I side 2 trumps in, and in other matchups, I side these cards. So like rather interesting cards, felt good in my opinion. Not going to talk too much about sideboards too, because it's like classic green sideboard in my opinion. You want to beat Time Warp mostly with these cards. You want to beat big bodies with these cards. You add another stun to your list. And this was to try and beat Kai'Sa, and spoiler alert, it was not enough. So I don't think I would play Leona into a regional right now, except if your whole thinking process is if I dodge Kai'Sa, then I might win the event, because that might happen, but like you won't dodge Kai'Sa forever, and I think a lot of good players will be on Kai'Sa. So this is something that you have to be aware about. The matchup is abysmal. You have like an abysmal win rate into Kai'Sa. But if you want to try and play Leona, I was really satisfied with the list, felt really good. Also, you should get as much intel as you can on showdown rulings with this list, because most rulings with Zenith Blade are counterintuitive, but they are very important in order for you to understand how to play the cards at the right timing. Which is also one of the reasons I think people undervalue the card, is that they don't know how to resolve it properly, so they think it's weaker than it actually is. And that's about it for the list. Did you consider Shrine? I did consider Shrine. So Shrine, for you guys who don't know Shrine, is a 3 energy gear that allows you to draw a card whenever you kill a stunned enemy unit. This is a decent card. This is a very decent card, right? The fact that you are sometimes able to draw like 2 to 3 cards off of Solaris Shrine is very insane. But the big problem, as I was talking about earlier, is that Leona values having control of the battlefield maybe more than any other decks. So what you want to do in the early game is drop a turn 1 unit, conquer the battlefield, and then if you have access to another turn 1 unit, next turn what you want to do is play this other turn 1 unit and also conquer a battlefield. And so basically, if you are not dropping Shrine turn 1 or turn 2, then maybe you're just not dropping it at all, because like you will need your runes later on to play spells and stuff. So the card was first a bit slow, sorry, and second, it was like kinda not working with what I wanted to do with the deck. Also, I kinda don't like this idea of playing a single card that sometimes you have it and then it feels good, and sometimes you don't. So you play a single copy because you don't want to draw multiples. But then if you happen to do this in your builds, you have higher chances of having like not very good ends with like several cards that you don't want to draw together. But you could consider the card in a slower build. If you opt for a slower build, I just don't think you are making full advantage of the stun mechanic, in my opinion. It's way harder to retake battlefields with a stun than it is to defend them, actually. What about find your center? Exact same reasoning as Solaris Shrine, which is like, if I'm playing Find Your Center, I can't really drop it in the early game because I want to drop units in the early game. And then if we're into a late game situation, I might as well use runes to play defensive spells or offensive spells than to like channel and draw. So I did not feel the need to play Find Your Center. You could probably play Find Your Center over Meditate though. You could probably do that, but I think like you already have enough runes in the deck and what you're missing is draw power, and so I'd rather value the extra draw from Meditate than the rune from Find Your Center. But you could probably play it over Meditate and that would be rather similar in the outcome. You don't like Shen? No, I do not like Shen. I can talk about Shen if you want me to. So basically, Shen is an insanely strong card when you are ahead. So like when you are in the lead and your opponent has to come crashing into you, then Shen is a very strong card because it allows you to surprise your opponent. It allows you to generate tempo, to generate board for like not so much resources. And that's very good, right? But the big problem with Shen is that when you are playing from behind, so like either going second or in an unfavored matchup, Shen is an absolute trash card. It's a 3 energy and a power cost for 3 might with no effect. Like basically no effect if you're playing from behind. So you have to be in the lead already to make Shen worth it. And if that's what I'm like looking for into a card, I'd rather prefer a card that says I'm dropping it and I'm winning the game on the spot. And Leona already has a lot of these cards. You have Facebreaker, you have Rune Prison, you have Zenith Blade. All of these cards is like you are in the lead, your opponent commits into your battlefield, and you end up stunning them and they lose everything and you remain in control and you win the game out of this. So I did not want to add an extra card to my list that would do the exact same thing. And also, all of the cards that I just mentioned, Rune Prison, Facebreaker, and Zenith Blade, are cards that are good at fighting for the board if you're behind, whereas Shen is not. So that's the reason I favored those cards.